Okay. Good morning, everyone. I am calling our meeting to order. It is now 9:35. Welcome to the September 3rd, 2025 meeting of the Joint City County Planning Committee. And we'll start with roll call.
Chair Jacobs,
Here.
Vice Chair Baker,
Here.
Councilmember Caballero,
Here.
Planning Commissioner Cameron, Commissioner Lee, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton,
I'm here.
Commissioner Valentine.
Here.
Thank you. Any adjustments to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on to announcements. Any announcements? Commissioner, Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you. So the Housing Task Force is meeting next Wednesday, September 10th, and I was hoping that the subcommittee chair, if he is amenable, can come to one of our subsequent JCCPC meetings and present on the land use portion of that report at some, either whenever he can, basically. I have to confirm with him that he's available. Yep.
Okay. Yes. So excited. I printed mine out last night. I would love to have the folks come and present if as soon as possible, actually. So yes, that would be great. Yes. This is the Housing Initiative Task Force.
It's going live by the end of the week. She was on the,
I'm on the committee.
so she got it.
I'll
before
give you it.
I get it.
You can look at it though. Okay. Anyway, and I do hope that all of our members of this committee will be able to attend next Wednesday morning at 11:30 at the Armory. Lunch will be provided.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the report will be living on the chamber's website. So that is what we're working on right now, is to make sure that it's ready to go by the end of the week and live, and then to save paper on a QR code on the agenda versus printing it all out.
Thank you. Okay, and next item, any other now? I'm sorry, yes.
So good morning, everyone. I just wanted to take a quick moment to introduce a new staff member who has been here for a little bit, but I don't think got introduced last month. So Sarah Warren is our new communications specialist and something, a long title with more words. But she is helping us with all sorts of things related, communications, graphics, branding, marketing, et cetera. So you will see her assisting Chris from time to time. But yeah, I just wanted to welcome her.
Welcome, Chris. Next, we have approval of the minutes for the August 6th, 2025 meeting. Are there any revisions? If not, I entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Baker, seconded by Commissioner Valentine. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The minutes are unanimously approved.
Madam Chair, before we proceed, can we go ahead and make a motion to get excused those who are not present today?
I think Commissioner Lee is coming.
He is coming?
Yes. Did I
Okay,
get a text?
okay.
Or maybe I need to check my text messages.
It would surprise me that you had any more information than me.
Oh, okay. It's my understanding that he is coming. So, if not, we will definitely do that. Thank you. All right. City and county managers' priority items.
None from the county, ma'am.
None from the city that I'm aware of.
Okay. And welcome to both of you standing in for other folks today. Okay. And we have Planning Commissioner Kim Cameron here today. Yeah, thank you. Okay. First, we have the new UDO Affordable Housing Density Program Review. And we'll pass that to Scott Whiteman. This is a follow-up item from our discussion last meeting.
Good morning. I'm Scott Whiteman with the Planning Department. As the chair mentioned, this was something we prepared to follow up to the robust discussion that we had last month about the densities and potential bonus programs in the new UDO. So we took a look to try to help you all decide what might work and what might not. We took a look at some programs across the country that were in places that we were aware of, that at least had some similarity to Durham, that we thought could provide some kind of advice to you all as what we might want to try as a community. As you all probably know, Durham has had an affordable housing density bonus in our ordinance for quite some time. Actually, I don't think, if anyone knows exactly when we put that in the ordinance, let me know, because it's been a long time and we don't know exactly sure when it started. It has not been well used throughout its history. When we checked our records, we've had one project that has developed under what its primary intent was, which was providing a mix of housing in one development with some affordable units and some market rate units, and that's in Patterson Place. We have had several projects that were 100% affordable who were able to take advantage of the bonus and get extra density, which is still probably a good thing, but it was not what it was originally intended for. So before again, just want to, this is basically just kind of a sampler tray of some inclusionary housing and density bonus programs. There are probably more out there. If anyone is aware of one that they think might be useful for this discussion in the future, please let us know. We'll be happy to look into it. And also, if you hear something today about one of these communities and you're like, that actually sounds like a good idea, we can do some deeper digging on how it works and all that. And as you're comparing them, just know that municipal planning across the country is complex, and it's kind of hard to compare apples to apples or even apples to oranges. It's sometimes apples to tuna. So we
Wait, what?
apples to tuna. I was trying to think of two things that are not even closely. So you know, every state has its own statutes, which are similar and different and allow different things. You know, some of these are mandatory, some of them are voluntary. They have different affordability timeframes, affordability levels, and then every bonus program is going to be added on top of all the other regulatory things that are required that each locality has. So it's not really easy to tell, you know, compare, but this will give you a snapshot of how it works in other places. There we go. So here are just a few places that have mandatory inclusionary housing programs. And I will say, as before the attorneys make me say this, that there is no clear authority under North Carolina law to do mandatory inclusionary housing. That being said, Town of Davidson has been doing it anyway since 2001. Talked to the staff there. They have a 30% AMI requirement for their affordable housing units. They also have a fee in lieu of for alternative compliance. And since the life of their program, they've only had about 100 affordable housing units developed out of a little over 6,000 during that period.
So just clarify, Scott, in 24 years, they've only created 100 units.
Yeah, they have produced a lot of fees in their fee in lieu program. Yeah.
Okay, payment in lieu.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Do we know what that number is?
Did not include the fee in lieu totals, but most places have that. We could find that.
Okay, thank you.
Montgomery County, Maryland, which is right outside DC, has had what they call a moderately priced dwelling unit program since the early 70s, which actually has produced a lot of units based on their history. It also focuses on for sale units rather than rental units, which is different than most affordable housing or inclusionary housing programs. And since it's been since 1974, actually a lot of the units that produced, their affordability period has expired, so they're now just market rate units. So that one seemed fairly successful, at least in the past, but lately they had 353 units in the last 4 years out of a total of 1,000, which is not very many units for such a huge locality. And then Minneapolis, a inclusionary housing program was recommended in their comprehensive plan. And so they established one in 2023, which so far has 117 out of 1,597 units, or about 7.3%, have been affordable. They also have a fee in lieu option. I'd say for the ones that are fairly recent, it seems like there's also something, the multifamily market has been relatively slow in 2024 and 2025. So it's probably too early to figure out if Minneapolis is working or not. So some voluntary density bonus programs in nearby localities. So Chapel Hill is a little bit complicated. Chapel Hill technically has an affordable a mandatory inclusionary housing policy as well, but it only applies to for sale units. Their staff says that was to avoid this state's prohibition on rent control. And just as you know, Chapel Hill, the nature of the land and the type of development that happens at Chapel Hill, their staff says they do not get many developments at all that actually meet the threshold for their inclusionary housing program. So most of their affordable housing is actually produced through a combination of a modest density bonus and negotiations at the council, since a whole lot of Chapel Hill's applications require council approval. So that's when you see the 18% of the units approved in 2025 were affordable at 80% or less, that's good. The vast majority of those were ones that came out of the discretionary review process, not their inclusionary housing. Alexandria, Virginia, we were not able to get the total number of units. They seem Virginia also prohibits inclusionary zoning. They've had a program that seems fairly similar to ours currently, and kind of what kind of districts and what kind of bonuses they allow. And they said they've gotten 605 units constructed since 2002, but they also have a fee in lieu program, which has produced some fees. And then,
Okay, so that's only about 30 units per year they've gotten.
yeah,
Since 2002.
yeah.
Okay.
And then Dallas, Texas has a fairly recent affordable housing density bonus program that was established in 2019, which is, it's pretty generous in kind of the bonus. You go from fairly low to fairly high, and it's produced 743 units out of 11,000 total, which is about a little under 7%. They have a very interesting thing that I don't know how, if it's even legal, it would be very complicated for anyone else to do, but they basically have a market analysis for their entire city that sets the affordability levels and rents and percentages based on the market of any particular part of the city, which probably helps with the effectiveness, but that would be really complicated to administer.
Do we know who's administering it there?
So they had a consultant prepare it, and then the staff administers it.
Okay. Do we know how many staff people they have to just administer that?
That I don't know.
Okay, those are just, we
Yeah,
can
that's-
follow up with those things.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Dallas also has a fee in lieu, which is also, in addition to the 743 units, they've also produced a lot of fees through that.
Just want to add a little context on Alexandria. 30%, right? And
That's what I got, yeah.
Okay.
I know.
Because when I
you
was
have some
there,
familiarity with that.
I mean, 30%, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's like public housing. When I was there, they were doing 70 and 80%. And they had a lot of units coming online. So maybe they're just not online yet.
Yeah,
they've been producing a lot more recently. So I'm sure that early on, the early iterations were probably not producing very much. I think they've made some tweaks, and they constantly make tweaks. And I think that's brought a lot online. I think Alexandria would also be just very interesting to look at, because they had old, conventional suburban style zoning regulations. And then they overhauled their regulations and they upzoned everything. But legally they managed, and I'm not going to get the terminology right on this, but legally they managed to basically say, you can build it up to this in our new zoning regulations, but anything above our old regulations and density is part of the voluntary density bonus. So I would be really interested in getting more of an explanation from a legal standpoint on how they did that. And then they also had like multiple different kinds of density bonuses. So they had like an FAR density bonus as well as like a height density bonus. So I'd be interested in.
Yeah, we could dig deeper into Alexandria.
Yeah.
But I'm confused because they only have, since 2002, even though it's 30%, they've only generated about 30 per year. So, and we don't have any information about any other ones, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, I've had some initial contact with the staff there, but it was staff from their housing department. So I may dig deeper with the planning department to see if there's something we're missing on that. Yeah.
Okay.
So we included Austin, Texas, has like a whole bunch of different density bonuses that apply in different parts of the city. So I thought this would be a good example. It just can show how they work in, you know, places with kind of different contexts in the same jurisdiction. I also worked for the city of Austin before I came here, so I have some familiarity with all these places, which made it a little bit easier for me. So they have three bonuses in downtown, Rainy Street, and the University Neighborhood Overlay, which is abbreviated UNO. These are areas that are in and around downtown where there is really, really strong demand for high density housing. The Austin skyline is full of like 9,000 foot buildings. So these seem to have not produced many actual affordable units, although the UNO has 7%, which is probably seems to be about what most places get on average. But the downtown one in particular has a fee, they all have a fee in lieu option. The downtown one in particular has produced over 27 million in fees, but only 4 units. And some of that the staff told it, and it's just because the expense of construction for really high-rise buildings is so high. And then also what several staff people from several cities said, anytime you do high-density condos, it's almost impossible to make the numbers work because of all the HOA fees and all that. So in places like a booming downtown where you're gonna get a lot of residential as condos, it's gonna be hard to make a bonus where you actually have to build the unit work effectively. I think in Rainy Street and UNO, and it was maybe somewhat similar to what Councilmember Baker was saying about Alexandria. They were really low density suburban zoning right next to downtown and the University of Texas. So kind of unleashed a lot of demand with the zoning. And so they were at least somewhat successful in capturing that additional demand through this bonus. The ERC is the East Riverside Corridor and NBG is North Burnett Gateway. These are 2 more suburban areas where the city's targeting redevelopment. Got a lot of old strip malls and older garden apartment complexes. The staff said they have gotten some affordable units of the ones that have been built, but they have not had seen a lot of success of people actually wanting to build new projects in those areas. And I thought this was a good cautionary tale for us because a lot of our transit opportunity areas look a lot like these areas. Think of places like South Square or up near Durham Regional, Duke Regional. And then lastly, they have an affordability unlocked, which is basically a bonus program that applies across the city that basically gives developers a very significant bonus for 100% affordable housing projects. And so this was kind of their way to basically help people who want to build like tax credit projects avoid having to go through the rezoning process. So as long as you do a deeply affordable project, you can, in most zones, build it by right. And they said the numbers make it look, if it's eligible citywide, so the number of places that you could actually do it, there haven't been that many, but they said for the projects that do it, they've been 80% affordable, which is pretty amazing. And so that seemed like a pretty good option for us. Let's throw that one in.
This is really cool. So I really like the affordability unlocked option. It's something that I've been thinking a lot about, and just massively upzoning. Essentially, nonprofit developer wants to come and build 100% affordable. I mean, let them go as high as they want in many places. That would be really cool. Just so I understand, so this is sort of a geographic specific, so it's more tailored based on geography.
Yeah, they're either through a small area plan or some sort of limited zoning implementation. So rather than doing a citywide program other than the affordability unlocked, they're tailored and they have different standards for each.
Okay.
So that's why, and then if you're really interested, I linked there, Austin had a consultant report prepared to kind of analyze all these. So I put a link in the memo to that. There's some really good information in there for anyone who wants to do a deeper dive.
Cool, cool. And I think that's also a little bit of how Alexandria works. They have all the small area plans, and there are sort of tailored density bonus programs as well.
Yeah, that's one of the tricky things. Even though we're much smaller, something that might work in downtown would probably not work down in South Point or something like that. And so just a couple of conclusions. So the current draft of the new UDO does have some bonus provisions in there. The RD district has a bonus where you can do up to 6 multifamily units, 10, 9, 8. Somewhere between 6 and 10 units. And then in the RD district, as long as there's some percentage of those units are affordable. And then our RFP specifically mentioned that we wanted the consultant to provide an update to the current affordable housing density bonus, provide some recommendations on how to calibrate it so that it would be effective, have the right amount of incentives so that folks actually use that. So that has not been included yet in the draft, but that's something that will be coming. And then
I'm so sorry.
okay, and then just as we were looking through these and talking to some staff from across the country, just some of the things that they mentioned for us to keep in mind is when the bonus programs, when there's a fee in lieu option, are not super effective at creating affordable units, but are pretty effective at generating fees for affordable housing development. There's calibration is the key, making sure that you have the right numbers, and you probably need to update them very frequently. And that would include, just the percent affordable, the AMI, the amount of the bonus, but also if there's a fee in lieu, constantly calculating what that fee is and making it legally defensible. And then they also said, when it does work, it's used only affordable housing part of the bonus. This said, particularly the folks in Austin said anytime they tried to add other public goods as part of the bonus, it ended up being too much. And then they ended up not having much participation at all. So those are just a couple things to keep in mind. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any more questions.
Bo, did you want to say something?
Oh yeah, I forgot he's lurking back there.
Bo Dobrinsky, Plain Valley Department. I have so much to say. First, I just want to add that in addition to the RD, we've got similar bonus provisions in terms of height and density in the RX and CX districts as well. And those are actually uncapped, the idea of giving maximum flexibility. Like, for example, Councilmember Baker, you brought up affordable developer wanted to build, let them, right? But I actually only came up here and interrupted Scott to add that our technical consultant, Code Studio, we've got Colin Scarf on a Zoom call that can answer any questions as well about the current proposed density options or density bonuses.
Thank you so much. First of all, I just want to say thank you to the staff for pulling this together so quickly. I asked for this follow-up information and that was done very quickly. I think it's very important that we look at the actual facts and the data And, you know, this is an issue that nobody has really been very successful with. That's the reality. We know that density bonuses are going to be one of the tools in the toolbox. It will not solve this problem. And, you know, that's why, and also this Housing Task Force report that is going to be shared with the community next week is so important because it's also based on Durham conditions and input from people in our community. As you can see, the range here, that was fascinating what Austin has done. And we have to come up with solutions that are going to work for Durham. And I think I really want to encourage all of us, if we have a certain city or community that we think is doing something right, that we can learn from. I really appreciate, Scott, that you literally picked up the phone and called people and had conversations with them. It's so valuable. So thank you for putting in the time and the effort for that. And we should keep doing that. And we're going to have to try things out and see what works and doesn't work and probably go back and change things. Because when you said, I don't know how long, I'm as old as dirt now. I'm in that category. And I remember when we started that bonus. So, you know, I don't know exactly, but it was definitely after 2005. So, so anyway, yes.
Thank you,
Prepare
Madam
for
Chair.
them.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Good to see y'all. I hope it doesn't sound petty that I take solace in the fact that other cities are struggling with this as well. So hope it doesn't sound petty. Just a couple of observations. First of all, we're going to Austin in November. We've got an intercity visit
Yes.
to Chambers, so we'll have opportunity to kind of do a deeper dive on the ground there. I'm not surprised that as you get outside the downtown corridor, you have more success. Durham, we've made a conscious decision to focus on that. We donated land downtown and money, and I think about Willard Street. Doing so. We one thing about Durham is we know that it's more expensive downtown, but we've just made a decision, a value decision, that we want downtown to not be a homogeneous neighborhood. We want it to be mixed, racially, economically downtown. So that's one thing that I think distinguishes us. Secondly, the affordable housing in Durham, and I'm curious about these other cities. Affordable housing does not mean that it's different, the materials or quality. What makes it affordable in Durham is who's living there, the amount of subsidy on it. And I'm curious as to in other cities if there are affordable units look different, feel different, are easily distinguishable from market rate units, because we made a conscious decision in Durham that affordability in Durham, you can't tell the difference between it and market rates who lives there. So those are the kind of things I'm going to be looking for and keeping in mind as we move forward, because I've been to other cities and you can tell the affordable units from the market rate ones, but that's not who we are or who we're aspiring to be in Durham. So this is very helpful, very, very, very good context, and I'm looking forward to going to Austin and seeing what they're doing. But we continue to push. A density bonus, as the chair said, is one tool in the box. It hasn't been a perfect tool, but a tool nonetheless. And we should definitely keep it in the box, but it's going to require some deeper dives as we move forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Two things, because you mentioned it in a couple places. Like, I know that you mentioned for Minneapolis, their density bonuses were tied to their comp plan redo, right? And then Austin also went through a massive upzoning. Could you tell me a little bit about, and some of them I under, like the one in Baltimore or Montgomery County, Maryland, is older, so maybe that's not as clear, but where it would be helpful to understand what was happening with their land use broadly, because I can see, I mean, we're in the middle of a big rewrite. And so that the question of where do we offer density bonuses, where does it make more sense? Like, that lesson is going to be important for us to see what other cities, as they were going through their rezoning or their UDO rewrites, what were some of the lessons learned for them that could be applied here that are helpful? Like, to your point, okay, we thought this was going to work in a transit opportunity zone, but based on these other cities' examples, it might not, right? And so that we can learn from other people's mistakes before we make the same one is basically what I'm saying. And I know it's not going to be perfect. I think that that's why we know that UDOs get omnibus changes and things like that, because we understand you pass a thing and then a few years later you realize, oh, we've got to make these tweaks because it's playing out differently than we anticipated.
Yeah, no, in Austin in particular, they've tried to do 2 massive UDO updates for their city that both have had to be aborted because of controversy. And I think their attorney general inserted himself in one of those. So I'd say a lot of what Austin is doing is trying to plug the gaps until they can actually finally
So they
get their
haven't
code
gone-
update. So they have not, they've
They're
tried.
not like Minneapolis.
They're
that
not
did-
like Minneapolis, yeah.
Okay.
Minneapolis did the
The big thing.
they're similar to what we're doing.
Right.
They did a vision with the comp plan, laid out some key things they wanted to do, and then are working through implementing those. And one of them was the inclusionary housing policy that is now in effect.
Which they shared with us last year that the sweet spot was around 8%, and they're getting, I mean, was that what, 7.3? I mean, that's what they were real clear last year when we were there on our intercity visit last year about what is that percentage where it starts to make it hard for projects to actually pencil if you put, which we were seeing with 505 West Chapel. I mean, right, we're experiencing that with a city project, right? And so I thought that was interesting that number aligned. Okay, so I guess my other question would be then, you did talk about the states that have like essentially preempted mandatory inclusionary zoning. That was helpful. So Texas obviously is like North Carolina. It's
Yeah.
probably a Dillon rule state.
Texas is a home rule state, but you might
But
imagine
strong in preemption. That's right. They're a
their
weirdo.
legislature loves
Okay.
to preempt
Yeah,
cities
So
that
that's right.
start with AU.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Well, also, I want to also highlight that Affordability Unlocked seemed to be the most effective in Austin. So definitely us looking at that more carefully would be great. And
Yeah, and that kind of mimics where our affordable housing density bonus has actually produced units is when a tax credit project was able to just triple the number of units they would normally be able to build because of our affordable housing density bonus. So I think
Right.
it does seem like something like that could be effective here.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do want to, and I'm sure when we have them come and present, but there is a section in this report with input from local developers about what type of density bonuses they think would work in Durham. And these are people who want to build affordable housing in Durham, and they want to partner with us. And so I think it's going to be very important that we do listen to the folks who are building the housing in Durham. And I just want to say that, again, this is a big, complex challenge that we are trying to solve, which is, when we go back to what we're all doing here is the comprehensive land use plan that we have adopted, city and the county, which comes out of what the community has told us that they want. And the community they want to have affordable housing. They want to end homelessness. People want 15-minute walkable communities, transit-oriented development, and they want to protect the natural environment. And, we've translated that into our future place type map. And now we're working on the UDO to translate that plan into action and to achieve the things that people in our community say they want. It's going to mean, and I know Councilmember Caballero says this over and over again like a broken record, but it means that what our community looks like is going to change. And people need to really, change is hard. But if we say that we don't want homelessness, and we say that we want Durham to be a place where people don't have to leave and where they can afford to live and work, then that's the trade-off. because you don't solve affordable housing and you don't solve homelessness without building a lot of housing. That's the only way at the end of the day that we solve those two problems. And we're working on a Vision Zero homelessness plan right now. And ultimately, that's how communities solve homelessness, is making sure we have housing for everyone. So this is really important work, and really value the work, again, that staff is doing. I also want to highlight that, there's going to be a role for government, and 30% AMI doesn't happen without subsidies, as Mayor Pro Tem has said, in one way or the other. When I look at the county's 300 and 500 East Main Street housing projects, which I've been a part of now for 8 years. So when they get done, maybe it will be 10 years. At the end of 10 years, we'll have 300 units. And we will have put in probably way over more than $20 million of public funding. Just the subsidy that we're providing per unit for the county. And that doesn't include us subsidizing the parking and all these other things. We will have spent over $100,000 per unit. So it's very expensive for the public to build, local government to build affordable housing. Of course, that's one of our tools. We're going to keep doing it. But the big picture here is that there's lots and lots of different things that we're going to have to do. And we have to be honest with our community about the trade-offs related to that. So thank you.
Yeah, just want to say thanks for the research on this. And yeah, this is a good way to produce that 80-70% AMI, but of course, public subsidies for the 30%, everything below. You said someone from Code Studio was on the line.
Yep.
Just if they had any commentary, any additional commentary that they wanted to share about the current draft or things that they're working on regarding density bonus, I'd love to hear it.
Can you hear me? Can you all hear
You
me?
can close us out, Colin.
I don't have a ton to add.
I think can we hear you?
Can you hear me? Hello.
We cannot hear you.
My
Oh, now we can. Great.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Great conversation. Really interesting to see what Scott and the staff has been looking at. As you know, it's a very complicated issue, and it is a bit of a balancing act. As you I don't know if you guys remember can I share my screen?
Sure.
Let me see. So hopefully you can see this. Back when we did our kind of approach. So we've based our current approach for the RD districts on this initial analysis that we did a while back. So we kind of calibrated the draft numbers in the draft UDO to kind of match this approach, right? So where we added units and reduced parking and reduced the size of units, we saw a drop in the cost of housing. So we have tentatively based our calibration on the RD districts on this approach. So I think something like, in the RD, you get 1 unit on a 5,000 square foot lot. And then on the affordable approach, I think you can get up to 8 units on a 5,000 square foot lot. And that was to kind of match this approach where we were generating something like a 74% AMI when we were looking at 8 units on a 5,000 square foot lot, I believe is something like that. So, and then just a reminder that we didn't run kind of any economic analysis on your multifamily districts, but we did try to kind of show you, based on your current approach, what the densities might produce in terms of like number of units, based on your current requirements, right? And then when we eliminated the density, you could see how many more additional units you could get. So, you know, the takeaway from us at that point in time was that there was a huge constraint from a density perspective on your existing multifamily districts, regardless of whether you have a density bonus or anything like that. So, you know, one of the things that we're proposing is to eliminate that density. So in theory, you should be able to generate more units that way. So just another thing to add, I guess, is that I'm sure you know that different neighborhoods or different areas in Durham are going to generate different market outcomes, right? So any system that you look at, you kind of have to make sure that you calibrate correctly for that specific part of town, right? Because downtown is going to be more expensive than another neighborhood outside of downtown. So we just need to make sure we're looking at that. And I'm from Austin, so a little bit familiar with what's going on in Austin. So yes, the Affordability Unlocked, I think, is a really interesting idea and an interesting program. There's a similar one in Cambridge, up near Boston. I think they have 100% multifamily affordable overlay that's kind of trying to do the same thing. So what it really does, it just kind of eliminates most of the requirements for affordable projects. And I think what you'll see in Austin that is generating more for sale product than is rental, because just that's the way it's calibrated. And I guess for any kind of citywide system, we just need to make sure from an equity perspective that that approach is not impacting one neighborhood or one part of town over another. Because it seems like if you have an affordability program that applies the same citywide, it's going to impact certain neighborhoods over another just because of the simple cost implications. It's going to be cheaper to do something in one neighborhood than you're going to be able to do it in another neighborhood. So we'll just have to be aware of that. And I think, you know, we're fully committed to flushing out a density program or an affordability program that works. I think what we put in the current draft of the UDO was like our initial approach. And so we're hoping to work that out and flush that out with stuff as we move forward.
Thanks, Colin. Just wanted to get a little update from where you all are. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you, Councilmember Baker, for asking Colin to join us. Yeah, thank you so much. And we do really look forward to you developing these concepts in a more detailed way and as we finalize the UDO. And do you have any questions or anything for us while you're here?
Nope. I'm just glad you guys are thinking about this and talking about it the right way. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. And yes, Commissioner Valentine.
Madam Chair, good morning.
Good morning.
So I agree that our community needs to change with respect to what we believe to be true about affordability, homelessness, and protecting our environment. And so I want to highlight that our present models across the country do not reach those who are in greatest need. And so that's true even here in Durham. And for those we represent in the county, specifically on the issue of density, some of the county residents have a different idea about how we approach this issue. Notwithstanding, you know, those communities that are annexed in the county, much like mine. But I'm concerned that sometimes we have these conversations, and I'm glad that everyone around this table and staff are committed to moving forward with regards to the issue of affordability. But it doesn't seem to reach, as I just noted, those who are in greatest need. Maybe density increases the probability that those who need housing the most get it. But under our current models, we probably will be talking about this 10 years from now, and well, we should, because it's worth solving as a problem, both in this community and across the country. But what needs to happen, in my very humble opinion, is that in our nation, we need to make a commitment to public housing, which is different than affordable housing. And as policy makers and deciders, we need to put pressure on those who are above us in state and federal government on this issue. Maybe we need to do a little better job with that. I'm sure that there's others around the table who agree with me on this point. But affordability doesn't meet, as currently fashioned, does not meet the goal we're trying to accomplish. And so until our federal government makes a commitment to housing the unhoused, we're going to continue to struggle. But I am happy to report that people around this table I know are pushing this issue in the right direction. But I just want us all to be mindful of the different equities that exist between the city and the county as we address this issue, particularly as it relates to the discussion around affordability. I just want us all to be laser focused on affordable for who. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Valentine. Yeah, one of the recommendations in this housing report is related to what you just said, some of the policies that we really need to try to advance and you know, maybe on a more doable level, things like expanding the low-income housing tax credits and things like that that are maybe more doable under current administrations. But yeah, absolutely, we need some larger policy shifts. I think, you know, in terms of protecting county residents, that's why, you know, maintaining the current urban growth boundary is so important, and understanding that we are going to have very dense development within the urban growth boundary, and that is the way to protect our watershed and the more rural parts of the county. And so I think we have a good plan, and if we carry out what we said we're going to do, I think that is going to be the way that we help, I think, preserve the county. And to your point about different neighborhoods, I think that's one of the things that we heard today is coming up with an approach that is not one size fits all. So, yeah.
I'm glad we're all committed to this.
Yes. Okay, well, great conversation. We're completely off schedule. So, but important. Well, actually, we're not. 10:20. Okay, I'm wrong. We are only 3 minutes off. Okay. RTP text amendment, Robin Schultz.
Good morning, Robin Schultz, Planning and Development Department. Here to talk with you because anytime we have a text amendment, we're bringing them before the JCCPC. This is a text amendment that is privately initiated by RTP. However, it will be accompanied by a rezoning, which both of these will go before the Board of County Commissioners. This will be a county-only project, so it will not be going before council. Essentially what this is a rezoning to what's called a university and campus district. The way that these function is that they have an internal campus with more flexible regulation, with some sort of a boundary, which we call a transitional use area, which has a little bit more stringent regulation just to protect the adjacent properties. So as part of these requests, they also have a campus master plan. Travis is working on that. It's not quite ready for you, but it will be at Planning Commission and then again at the Board of County Commissioners. But essentially, this is a project to provide them the flexibility to work through the RTP 3.0 larger project and scale, which has already been adopted in Wake County. And in some ways is a soft launch of what we were planning to do with them with the new UDO. But obviously that is taking some time. Without further ado, I might let Travis do his talk.
Thank you, Robin, and good morning, everyone. Excited to be here. As Robin said, I'm Travis Creighton, Vice President of Planning and Public Policy for the Research Triangle Foundation. I'm also joined this morning by Scott Levitan in the back, our President and CEO. So if you have any questions for either of us after this, we're happy to field them for you. Just a little context here. Many of you have seen this content before, but I wanted just to give you the high-level overview of where 3.0 came from and what our objectives are in this presentation today. And then I'll talk a little bit in some more detail about the specifics of the text amendment at the end of this. So I'll try to go quickly, knowing that we're a little behind schedule and just to keep everything moving along. So I think most of you know us at the Research Triangle Foundation. We're the nonprofit entity that administers and stewards Research Triangle Park. Our core mission is really focused on that collaboration between our universities in the region, as well as with industry and RTP. So that research piece is really the critical component of our mission. The 3 founding universities are on our board, as is NC Central, and we also have partnerships in some shape or another with other educational institutions, as you see represented here on this slide. Just to contextualize the park, for those of you who haven't been out and seen us recently, this is our formal map of RTP. It is defined through a covenant boundary that dates back to the 1950s. So the park as a whole is about 7,000 acres. If you take out the NCDOT right-of-way, about 4,300 of those acres are in Durham County. So about 73% of the total park area is in Durham, and that residual 27% is in northern Wake County, just north of Morrisville and Cary. Within the park today, we've got about 385 companies that employ about 55,000 people. So that's really the economic impact that the park brings and that we really are focused on in terms of our mission at the foundation and what we're bringing to the residents of North Carolina. And again, we are a research park. We don't specialize particularly in any single industry. Everybody in the park today is doing some type of research and development, but you can see here just a sampling of the variety of industries that we do have present in the park today. Before I get into 3.0, I want to give you a little bit of the context of how we got here and why we're talking about a very different land use vision for the future of the park. So part of that really starts with our Hub RTP project. And I know many of you have been out and visited us. A couple of the buildings that you see on the master plan here have been completed with this project. This project goes back more than a decade. This 100 acres is owned and operated by us at the foundation. The original vision for what has now become Hub, again, goes back more than a decade. And this particular collection of parcels was rezoned in 2014 to allow this type of mixed-use development to happen. That was done after a master plan that was completed in 2011 for the park that first introduced that idea of we probably need to move in a slightly different direction than our very traditional 1960s single-use suburban development model. So we've been working over this for, going on 10, 15 years to begin the introduction of mixed use into the park. And so 3.0 is really the next step in this evolution and process for what an innovation district and a research park really needs to be in the 21st century. So Hub is really a starting point for us and was a key input into why we are having a broader conversation about the land use in the rest of the park outside of these 100 acres. If you haven't been out to Hub and like to visit, please let us know. We'd be happy to host you and give you a tour of our existing and open buildings there and talk a little bit more in depth about what's to come in the next couple of years. But that really is a catalyst and leads us into why we've been working on 3.0. So we're going on 4 years of work here. We started this at the end of 2021, beginning of 2022. That was really when we began to identify as Hub was coming online. We're beginning to see the first mixed-use development emerge in the park, combined with this post-COVID new normal return to office. What is this? What does it mean? We're now 5 years into that, and many of our companies still haven't quite figured out what that means. So those two drivers really led us to say we need to undertake a physical planning process to think about how the park should develop over the next 50 years. And we've really taken a long-range vision and perspective on this because we know you can't transform anything overnight, and especially something as large as Research Triangle Park. It's going to take us some time to see that redevelopment. But much like our forefathers when they founded the park in the 1950s were very thoughtful and forward-thinking about what is now 65 years of park development, we need to really envision the next era of the park and be very forward-thinking in that. So this process, we at the foundation have stewarded and led it. It really is focused on a very long time horizon. It's been a very collaborative process. Through our land covenants, our owners and tenants in the park have some say in what happens, how we move forward. So we've been very engaged with them. We've also been at the county commission many times. We did the same in Wake County to engage our elected officials and additional park stakeholders and economic development stakeholders throughout this process over the past 3.5, 4 years. So through that process, we got a lot of input and feedback. And so we were able to sort of synthesize as we were going through the early stages of this in terms of what are we seeing happen, what trends are going on, what are other innovation districts doing. We got feedback from our internal stakeholders to say, okay, we're envisioning the future of the park. What does it need to achieve? And this is just a synthesis of really that input, right? So we've sort of set this as our North Star, our guiding principles of whatever the plan is, it needs to achieve these things, right? So some of the feedback we heard very clearly, the park has been about economic development and economic growth, so we need to center that going forward. We've gotten really good at retaining talent from our area universities. That was a key founding principle of the park back in the 50s. Let's keep doing that, and let's also keep attracting additional talent to our market. We've always been about research and development, so we cannot lose that as we think about adding new uses and different types of development. We've heard that very loud and clear from our existing park companies today. So that is really centered in the vision that we've developed. A key goal here is also, as we did that research and looked at the state of the practice in terms of our peer innovation districts and business parks, we want to make sure that our development patterns are remaining competitive with what we're seeing in other markets. That's been a key driver of this. And, you know, some of the feedback we also got that became sort of a through line to this is with the introduction of Hub and that mixed use amenities center that's located, you know, roughly in the center of the park, but it's not really a walkable center for most of our park companies, right? And so a key idea that we've had is there's probably opportunities for more mixed use development throughout the park that can provide those walkable amenities to other companies in the park, really create a number of those centers that create that amenitized work environment that we see very clearly in demand, both in research parks and innovation districts and broadly in the office market, at least at this point in time. So that has been a key idea we've carried forward into this process. A little bit more background on why we're doing this. So I've mentioned a couple of times we've seen clear trends in innovation districts nationally that we are not necessarily aligned with in RTP. So just a couple of data points on that and why we're focused on it. I won't go into all the detail in this slide, just a couple key takeaways I want you to have. This is excerpted from some research that Cullum Clark, who's an economist at Southern Methodist University, did last year. This is really one of the first comprehensive looks at innovation districts nationally. He did a lot of on-the-ground research, interviews, talked with people all around there, and he developed this theory of, you know, why we have innovation districts in the first place, right? Why does clustering of these industries happen, right? And he sort of traces it all the way back theoretically to the emergence of industrial districts in the 1800s, right? So you can go and see our warehouse district here in Durham or the warehouse district in Raleigh, you know, that clustering was happening in the 19th century. And when you fast forwarded to post-war America in the 1950s, we had all of this money from the federal government flowing into research. And so there was this desire to cluster that research activity, sort of capitalize on that hard to quantify, but very important interaction of ideas and minds that leads to that next big research innovation that creates that economic impact, right? So in the 50s, the planning paradigm was very much suburban, bucolic, you know, beautiful landscapes where people can drive in at 9 a.m. and do their research all day and then go home to their families elsewhere in the region. So that is RTP. We are that prototypical suburban innovation park. And then fast forward a couple of decades, we very clearly began to see early in the 2000s a move toward more urban style development. So that sort of started with just what we might consider more urban office parks, right? Still very 9 to 5, but clustered in a more urban environment, a little bit of walkability, some amenities to support that. And every decade since, we've seen iterations on that, going from just office to office and more retail, to now office and residential and retail, to really a whole kind of 18 or 24-hour innovation neighborhood. So all of that interaction occurring all throughout the day is really where we're seeing innovation occur. So many of our peers, whether they're innovation districts or business parks, whatever they want to call them, they've moved somewhere along that continuum. But in RTP, with the exception of Hub, which we rezoned in 2014, we are still very much on our suburban development model. And so the goal of 3.0 is to break that framework, introduce new types of development into the park, and allow us to redevelop in a way that, one, aligns us with our peers, and two, aligns us with the 2023 Durham Comprehensive Plan. One more data point I just want to throw out there. I pulled this from some research the National Landing Bid did back in 2022. They looked at a number of these more urban innovation districts that they view as their competitors. Some key takeaways here, right? You see that residential use is a fourth to half of the total use in many of these leading innovation districts. If RTP were on this graph, we would be pretty much entirely that dark blue office color, right? With the exception of the mixed use we now have at Hub, which would be a teeny tiny percentage of the total square footage, we are definitely out of step with these trends that we're seeing nationally and globally. So 3.0, our goal is to move us in this direction, align us with these folks that we are competing with for talent, for companies, for investment, all the things that matter to us as the nonprofit steward of the park. The other context that you all know well, so I will spend 2 seconds on this slide. Our region is growing and we are growing very fast. When we add 1 million people over the next 20 years, that's 400,000 dwelling units in our region to accommodate them. And those units have to go somewhere. So up until the opening of the first apartments in Hub last October, there were 0 residential units in RTP's 7,000 acres. There are now 406. We'll probably get up to about 1,200 under the existing entitlements at the SRPC district. That maxes out at 2,000. This RTP 3.0 will unlock the ability for housing development in the park. And so we're putting onto play a lot of acreage that has historically not been allowed for housing development. So if we put this in the context of the region, it's a very important part of the overall picture of how we will develop, how Durham will develop, and how RTP fits into that regional picture going forward. So what is this text amendment doing and what is the framework we're trying to enact? So through our process and through our collaborative work with our companies, we developed 3 new place types that we want to introduce into the park. So these are just some high-level computer renderings of your prototypical kind of development in the park. So today, between our zoning regulations and our land covenants, you're pretty much allowed to build one thing. And it's a very suburban development. You have to have 100-foot setbacks on all sides. You can only build on 15% of your land, so very, very low density. What we see is most people just build as much surface parking as they can. There's very little incentive to do structured parking, so we don't see that happening. So you get this. For some companies, this is working okay, especially our ag tech companies, those companies that have some land uses that are a little bit less compatible with mixed use development. Great. So we've told those companies, you can keep this going forward. You can continue to develop that as long as you have capacity. We will leave you alone. But for our other companies, especially our tech companies, that the world has changed a lot for them in 5 years, this model is really not working. And so our goal is to introduce 3 new models that will allow redevelopment over time in the park to unlock this new vision. So the first is what we call the enhanced corporate campus. This is just the idea that for some companies, they want to grow, but 15% building coverage really limits their ability to do so. So this would allow you to go up to about 60% lot coverage. You don't have to buy an additional acre of land. We don't have an additional acre of land to sell you. So great, you can grow your business, consolidate units into RTP, grow our regional economy, all of those sorts of things we want to encourage. You probably just convert some of that surface parking to structured parking, and you can get a lot higher and better use out of your land. This would also allow you to do things like add some more connectivity, walkability, add sidewalks, create a little bit more connectivity that we just don't have in the park today. Could also support things like public-facing uses, retail, restaurants, services, things that were not allowed in the park today under our land covenants. The second is the idea for residential neighborhood development in RTP. So the creation of new neighborhoods in the park. We modeled this model straight from the Durham Comprehensive Plan, which calls for that walkable 15-minute community. These would have a requirement for things like a town center, really those missing middle housing typologies, that greater density, all of those sorts of things are envisioned to be required in these types of residential developments in RTP. And lastly is the hub model of mixed-use node development. So creating more of those mixed-use centers that we see that are so in demand from an office perspective, and also again aligns with the future development envisioned under the Durham Comprehensive Plan. So these are the 3 new place types along with the existing place types. We'd have 4 types of development that we want to unlock in the park going forward under RTP 3.0. So this just recaps the goals of what we're trying to achieve at implementation, right? As we move forward in implementation and see this advance, our goal is that we're strengthening our position as a research and development center by creating the types of environments that are so in demand for the companies we want to recruit and the jobs we want to create. We're aligning with those trends we're seeing nationally and globally among our peers. We're diversifying land use to make sure talent wants to locate here. They have a place that they want to live and can enjoy that type of environment. And we're also putting our land, which is really underutilized today under the existing zoning, to higher and better use, not just to achieve our goals, but to also achieve local and regional goals as well. So briefly, I'll just touch on how this relates to the text amendment that's before you today, some additional context on the background. So we really moved into this rezoning pursuit in January of this year. That was our first key action step. Our land covenants had to be revised to accommodate new and different uses. Our Owners and Tenants Association had to approve that. They did so in January with a 96% majority after many, many, many months of meetings and negotiations and discussions with those companies. That then put us on a rezoning path. So we moved forward in Wake County first, where there was not a pending UDO rewrite. So we had a little bit easier time moving that forward there. The Wake County Board of Commissioners approved that rezoning in RTP. It really was just a zoning text amendment. We just changed our existing zoning district in Wake County to accommodate these additional place types. That was adopted on June 16th, and the language of their ordinance was such that it'll take effect on Durham County's adoption of similar amendments or May 1st of next year, whichever comes first. So we did want to tie those together to make sure everything in the park happens at once, so we're not creating an imbalance in terms of what's happening between one part of the park and the other. The changes that we made to that research applications district in Wake County are very similar to what we're attempting to do with UC3 here. So we created a very broad and flexible zoning district. That's what's proposed to do here. You'll see we've modified some language in the UC district to add science and technical research parks as an allowable and kind of goal of that district. We've modified some of the standards and text throughout that to accommodate envisioning that new UC3 district. And the reason we've done that is because under our land covenants, we will have a private development review board that will more specifically tailor these specific 3 types of development. And there will be an internal review process through the park, through the foundation for those redevelopment applications. So we did that for a couple of reasons. One, our companies were very adamant about wanting to make sure we maintain that R&D purpose. So this is one way that we can do that. 2, in talking with staff, both in Durham and Wake counties probably over a year ago now, there were some specific things that we wanted to do that public staff probably didn't want to keep track of or monitor. And so us taking on that enabled us to be a little bit more flexible and a little bit more granular with how we develop this over time. So we are developing a complementary private set of regulations that our companies will adopt, we will adopt to enforce this and set up that internal regulatory structure. Those are under development right now, and we are working with our companies to implement those shortly after this rezoning is complete. So that's just how the whole package is meant to work together. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Travis and Scott, for being here as well. This is super exciting. When I first became a county commissioner is when the vision for the hub started, and that felt really transformational, starting out with 100 acres. And it took $20 million of Durham County investment in the hub to help make that happen. And we see, again, how long it does take. Here we are 10 years later, and really exciting to have the first businesses, small businesses, locally owned businesses opening there. And to see things like this is one of the visions right here of unlocking the creek that was on site, that was formerly under concrete, and creating incredible public space there. And you all, I want to applaud you all, have been so successful with the Frontier and the box yard placemaking and creating community for people, supporting small businesses. How many small businesses are located in the hub and Frontier?
Of the 385, we estimate about 150 of them are located in the Frontier campus.
Yeah, that's amazing. And the price point is huge, and there's, free co-working space and everything. So I just want to take a moment to thank you all for that, and also just really mark this. This is a big deal. This is huge. As Travis has laid out, big change from the park 65 years ago, but with a sense of urgency, because this is one of our economic engines for our region, for Durham County. We know that this RTP is under attack right now. If you look at what's happening with our biggest employers, NIH, EPA, RTI, a lot of the companies that had gotten the Inflation Reduction Act money, having that rescinded. Our universities, our research institutions that are the lifeblood of our economy. So I say that with a sense of urgency that the time is now for us to give the companies the flexibility to also survive and thrive and adapt during the changes that we're seeing right now. So I think the timing couldn't be perfect, along with our comprehensive land use plan, because this completely aligns with the goals of our comprehensive land use plan. So it's very exciting, and I'll stop and open it up to other comments or questions. Yes, go ahead.
First of all, wow. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for presenting. This is amazing work. You want to come work for us? This is really cool. First, I'm going to share why I'm mad. I'm mad because this is awesome and incredibly thoughtful. The work that's going into it feels like the devil in the details is there. And I don't want this to not be in the city. I want it to be in the city. And from an academic standpoint, it's fascinating. It's like a city almost with a CEO, but we've talked about this a little bit. Question. So a lot of places, and I think you're kind of getting to this with your analysis of innovation districts, which I think was a very thoughtful analysis, has been attempted over and over and over. Kind of these new urbanist communities have been attempted over and over and over, and they're all kind of just are suburban, vertical suburban a little bit. They don't quite get the details right from dimensional standards and everything, streets. All of that, you can always tell when you're walking in a place that's tried to become urban, after 1940. You can tell that they didn't quite get it right for pedestrians and transit riders. So do you feel like this is taking that into account, that it's going to truly urbanize? Or do you see there being more work there? Are you not concerned about it having a more suburban, autocentric feel, even as it's urbanizing? I'm just curious about your take there. I'll start there.
No, it's a great question, Councilmember Baker, and it's something that we've discussed a lot internally, especially early on in this process. So we certainly looked at a lot of those new urbanist communities, to your point, where certainly that residential neighborhood development typology comes from that sort of emergence, right? There's a couple things we've done to try to mitigate that. And I'll talk procedurally how we can sort of think about that going forward as well. The first is we've developed a set of street typologies that will apply in the parks. That's one of those private regulations. Those envision a much more, can we create actual urban streets in these developments that are multimodal in nature and that connect in nature and create that actual type of community. So that's one thing we've done up front to do it. A second that we've done is, and this was actually done based on the feedback of staff, single family housing is not planned to be allowed in those developments. So the lowest density that we're proposing is townhomes. So you get a greater density and intensity, so you have a more of a population there. And hopefully some of that gets you a little bit less Southern Village and Meadowmont and a little bit more, traditional 1920s neighborhood that would have been built in West Coast City or, older than that on the East Coast, for example. So we're sort of being thoughtful about that from the beginning. We will also have some design regulations. We have an existing board of design in the park that will continue under our new covenants. And so there will be a level of design review to think about, are we getting the massing right? Are we getting the spacing right? Is it the right sort of, pedestrian environment that we want to create over time? So through those, both from a kind of upfront standard perspective and then a long-term kind of monitoring of the design perspective, which has a long history in the park that's been in existence since the park was founded, we hope that we can see more of that urbanizing over time. Now, we are going to see some interesting things happen from market perspective in terms of what is the market willing to deliver at the beginning of this, right? As opposed to say 25 years in the future where delivering that more urban style development might be more feasible. So that's something that is just an unknown that we'll have to monitor and think about going forward. But we have tried to at least set up the right structures to hopefully see more of that urban style and less of that, yes, it's denser, but it's still very suburban.
Cool, thank you for that. And then kind of retail, are you thinking retail centers? I haven't looked at the master plan.
Yeah.
Retail centers, retail streets, those kinds of things. And then I've got another question, kind of like if there's a public plaza and there is an issue, there are activities happening, who are people going to call? Is it like private police, or is it the sheriff, or?
Yeah. So on the retail question, especially in the residential neighborhoods, we do have a requirement to meet a town center development. So you have some of those walkable retail amenities to actually walk to. So that's one way that we're addressing that. Again, some of our street typologies would also allow for more of that retail development, redevelopment over time to create some of those, kind of retail strips that would service that. Those are embedded there, as well as in the mixed use node development, where we already sort of have a little bit of that retail cluster happening at Hub. Other, centers like that could also develop over time. Again, we're very much designing this to be opportunistic, to see what is the market willing to deliver and how does that align with what we see long term. So I think that is on that piece. And then in terms of emergency response, the law enforcement response in the park is the sheriff's office. We already have a really strong and close relationship with the sheriff's office to talk about safety in the park. We're currently working with the county. Hopefully I'm not getting ahead of myself here, but on a potential lease for a sheriff's substation in Hub to provide better response time in the park as we're developing over time. So that is kind of from a law enforcement perspective, that we will see exactly what administrative models emerge, right? It'll sort of depend on what developer is developing what. Is there a master owners association that does have private security? We, for example, we do have private security on our Hub and Frontier campus that monitors that and engages with local law enforcement when needed. We will see over time kind of as those models evolve. One additional thing we have in the park is we do have a special tax district, very similar to a municipal services district, but it's under a different statute. So we do have the ability to raise some revenue to support either public or private law enforcement investments from a public safety perspective going forward. And we have been very thoughtful about being able to plan for needing to tap that money to provide a greater level of services to the park as we add density and uses.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, I would love to write a PhD thesis on this. I mean, it's a fascinating process and project, and great work. And yeah, the heartburn that I have of potentially drawing tax base away from the city. The reality is also we live. I mean, it's a polycentric region. And we want that. We don't want to just be a monocentric county. We want to be a polycentric county, a polycentric city. And we are a polycentric region. And so we need to embrace that and make these kinds of places accessible. So thanks for coming in and giving us that presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you. I've been down there. I've seen the incredible model that has been produced. It's very exciting. And I'm look forward to supporting the text amendment as it makes its way through our process. 7,000 acres is a lot of land. Not having a residential use on it is we have to fix it. So this is the way forward. And to Councilmember Baker's point, I say often we compete a lot in this region. There are lots of municipalities. There's lots of places that city workers that work here can work elsewhere, right? Like we have to consistently compete, and competition sometimes is hard, but we consistently want Durham to come out ahead. I'm always gleeful when we're doing something better than Raleigh. And, RTP is a huge part of Durham County. And so if it doesn't succeed and we aren't maximizing both land use and tax value out of it, then we're not really doing what we need to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? So Travis, I have a few follow-up questions. How do you feel like the issues around, I know great to hear that in the one of the possible options, there will be no single family. That's really great to hear. How are you envisioning workforce housing?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one we've tried to be thoughtful about. As you just heard on the affordable housing presentation, it's a very complicated and challenging issue to do that. We did a couple things to get a better, one, wrap our hands around this issue a little bit better and understand what opportunities might exist in the park. And two, we do sort of have a strategy around, at least attempting to see what we can do in terms of some workforce housing development. So on the first of those points, we did engage a consultant to do a study of the park to just see if someone wanted to do a LIHTC development in RTP, could they do it? And the outcome of that study was probably not. And the reason for that is when you go through the scoring process at the state level, because the park has not built any amenities or connectivity, the parcels do not score well under the LIHTC grading criteria. So part of this is if we can actually begin to build those amenities and create that connectivity in the park, you suddenly unlock the ability to actually do a LIHTC development in the park. So that was an important piece of data that we had, and I think also adds to the urgency of getting this moving and getting that development underway, is then you open up more land to that 100% affordable development. The second thing that we've done, and this sort of goes to some of what you heard earlier in Scott's presentation of creating some value capture and public benefit. One of the pieces that we've advanced in this is to move into one of these new development options. We've created under our land covenants what's called the RTP Reinvestment Fund. So redevelopment would have to pay a small portion, sort of like a tax, into that fund on an annual basis. And that money could be used for a variety of purposes. It could be public infrastructure upgrades, trails, public transportation. It could also be things like big research initiatives that partner with our universities and think about economic development creatively and differently. So we've offered that as an option. What we are working on and figuring out how to do the math behind this is we want to offer an option to developers to, instead of paying that fee, providing on-site affordable rental housing at, say, 80% AMI. So that math is still ongoing to figure out how can we get that incentive right. So it's not a density bonus. It's sort of a, rather than paying this fee in perpetuity, give us some units for 30 years and we'll waive your fee. So we're trying to figure out what the math needs to be to actually make that appealing to folks. And it's something we'll have to monitor ongoing to see if we actually see those units generate, or are we in a density bonus situation where we thought it would do that, but it's not quite doing that? So we're working on that structure and plan to implement that as a way to advance sort of two things, right? One, the public benefit being addressed and the park's purpose being addressed through that value capture, but two, hopefully potentially seeing some of those affordable units come online.
Thank you. And because this is kind of a tabula rasa to Councilmember Baker's point, and there's the opportunity to do all these different things, I assume you've done a lot of looking at the way some of our competitors have evolved. And, you know, as the previous conversation about lessons learned, not repeating mistakes of others, what are some of those things that you've learned that you know that we don't want to do?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we've heard very clearly, and this goes back to some of Councilmember Baker's comments about those new urbanist communities, is, and this is one of the kind of those private regulations we want to implement, is there a minimum or maximum acreage in terms of how much of that residential should be? What is a good minimum acreage to create that mixed use center that can actually activate and create that amenity center that we want? Is there kind of a minimum required mix of uses that would help that? Is there a minimum required mix of housing types, right? So you're not seeing a very suburban development that's kind of exclusively one housing type, but you see more of that layering on of kind of a more traditional urban neighborhood where you might have that denser apartment building at the corner, and then kind of, you know, some of those houses that are actually 4 or 5 units, but might look like a single family home along the street. So we're trying to get those formulas right to create that development outcome in terms of actually creating that urban fabric and development over time. I think the other thing we've tried to do, you know, it is a little bit, you know, we have existing development in the park, but because the building coverage has been so low, much of it is undeveloped. And so we've tried to think about how can we learn from what urban development looks like today, and then try to retrofit that into a suburban model. So this idea of suburban retrofit has also been a through line in our study and analysis of how do we take the unique characteristics of the park and layer that on. The other thing that we've done that I didn't present on today, but we are also thinking about a number of kind of big moves and transformative projects in the park that the foundation probably steward. You know, what are kind of those key amenities that would help make the park desirable and potentially unlock additional development potential in the future? So we've done some thinking and planning on, you know, is there a signature greenway in the park that could do something like the Atlanta Beltline has done, that could maybe even anchor a redevelopment in RTP, right? And we've actually socialized that with our companies and gotten really positive feedback on some of those big ideas and big moves. So creating some of those anchoring public amenities, or at least having a vision for doing that on the front end, so we're not trying to go back in and retrofit it after we've got all this urban development. So we've tried to sort of parallel a number of those things to be able to be thoughtful about this as we begin to see redevelopment occur in RTP.
Fascinating. Could you talk about how you came up with, I noticed there's a 300-foot height limit. And then you also talk about the no more, you know, the adjoining development, no more than 150% of that adjacent height. And could you, and how many stories is 300 feet? So
I don't know the stories off the top of my head, but I can tell you, we took the 300 feet straight from the SRPC district. So the precedent in Hub was the maximum height was 300 feet. So we replicated that. That's also the maximum height that is in the new Wake County district. So to be consistent, we set it at that. For the transitional use area, we essentially took the standards that apply to Duke University and just copied them over. The only exception that we added there was a portion of the park abuts a railroad right-of-way. So we did carve out an exception to go up to 200 feet if you're adjacent to that railroad right-of-way, because you really don't have a neighbor in that instance. And there's a precedent in the existing SRPC district where you don't have to apply your side yard in if you're adjacent to a railroad right-of-way, for example. So we took some of those precedents that existed in the existing zoning districts and carried them forward into the proposal for the maximum height limit and the transitional use area.
Okay. I also just want to highlight for this body the incredible opportunity we have for Durham Public Schools. You know, if this is going to be a place where people are going to live, work, play, it's also going to be a place where there are children living, families living, where we're going to need schools. And I think similarly being innovative and reimagining what public schools can be like in RTP, a more urban, those folks who have grown up in cities, like Mayor Pro Tem, you know, a different type of school than we think about, and also thinking about Durham Public Schools that are aligned with the foundation and all the companies there, the possibilities around a curriculum, you know, having education to career pipelines. That is one of the things that I am super excited about. And so I just want to put that out there as something that we should do that everywhere. Yeah, that's true. But here is a no-brainer, right? I just wanted to put that out as something else for us to think about. You mentioned that you all are developing an alternative pedestrian plan, a master plan, some private regulations. So I hope that when those things come online, that you will share that with all of us, because I think we can all learn from that. And lastly, I want to highlight something that was discussed at the last joint City-County Board of Education meeting, and that is around the multimodal future here. Again, thinking about how kids get to school or people get to work, the fact that a multimodal hub is being built in partnership with Go Triangle for buses, BRT, the intersection with the Triangle Bikeway Plan, which Wake County is building all the way up to the multimodal hub. They are building part of the Durham portion of the Triangle Bikeway Plan. Wake County is paying.
We also invested in that.
Okay,
So,
and you're paying for it
yes,
too?
Yes.
Okay, thank
So
you.
to get it to the Western Park boundary, we did contribute our portion of that, and we are partnered with Wake County on the design of that full segment from RTP's western boundary at I-40 and TW Alexander all the way to the North Carolina Art Museum.
Thank you. And to that, just to raise what you mentioned before, is that I want to give the RTP Foundation credit for passing a transit tax, which generates 2.4 million. Is that right?
It generates about, I want to say 2.1 million, something like, maybe might be a little lower. I can tell you there's currently 4.6 or 4.2 million in a reserve. We've been leveraging that tax for about we're on our third fiscal year of that. So we are planning to use some of that fund reserve to support the passenger rail feasibility study that was discussed at that joint city-county meeting. And it's also available for additional future significant infrastructure needs and local matches to support federal funding as well.
Yeah, awesome. So, well, anyway, we're appreciative that other folks are helping to build the Durham portion of the Triangle Bikeway. And also, as you mentioned, the passenger rail station. And then lastly, the FAST 2.0 study, which we saw the results of, that envisions an exchange center over over 40 that would be circulating buses throughout the triangle from RDU, but also connecting RTP directly to RDU, which is also great. So exciting to think about all of the connectivity that is going to happen. And we want the whole Triangle region to be connected, right? So anyway, thank you so much. Any other questions or comments before we move on? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Consolidated case summary, Aaron Kane. I don't think Aaron Kane is here, though. Oh, there you are. But you're not presenting.
Good morning. Peyton Burgess with the Planning and Development Department. Not Aaron Kane, not quite as good of a radio voice, so sorry, everybody. Shut it, Chris. This morning, I am here to present the consolidated case review summary. So just a reminder, this is a quarterly update that we do for any consolidated annexations. So that's going to be annexations that also have a zoning change request. And I have 3 new cases for you guys since last time I was here, and they are all located inside the urban growth boundary, just as a heads up. And also, these are still under staff review, so there is the potential for some things to change before they actually make it to council. All right, so our first request is a rezoning request from residential suburban 20 and commercial general to commercial general with a textual development plan to allow for all the uses within the commercial general rezoning except for a couple exceptions. A petition to annex for the portion of the site not currently within the city limits has been received with this rezoning application. The place type map is highway commercial, and the proposed rezoning is consistent with that. Any questions before I move on? All right, our next request might look a little bit familiar. It is a request to rezone from residential rural to planned development residential 2.590 to allow for the construction of up to 561 dwelling units and up to 5,000 square feet of non-residential uses. The proposal also proffers a minimum of 175 townhouse units, a maximum of 380 single-family units, and 5% of the final unit count is income restricted at 80% AMI for 30 years. A petition to annex into the city limits has been received with this rezoning application. The existing place type map is recreation and open space and mixed-use neighborhood, and they are keeping those 2 place types, although some of the recreation and open space is going to be proposed to be changed to that mixed-use neighborhood. Still the same 2, but just a little bit of a different allocation. And when I think you guys saw a proposal recently on this, it did include a portion that was outside of the urban growth boundary, and that, if you'll see on the map right there, is no longer a part of the proposal. I'm sorry, do you need me to go back?
Can you go to the thank you. This isn't just for this case. I had asked, there was a case a few months ago. Can staff get me, with the open space designation that we have, can we get an analysis of what's actually held on private property with that designation and not just like city or space at, state park or whatnot? I just would like a sense of how we're identifying, privately held land that has been designated as open space in the comp plan. Thank you. And when I say private, I mean by an individual, not by like Duke Forest or something like that. Thank you.
All right, moving on to Glen School Road, mixed use. This is a request to rezone from residential rural and commercial neighborhood to commercial general, industrial light, and planned development residential to allow for a mixed-use development, including a maximum of 235 apartment and/or townhouse units, 850,000 square feet of light industrial, and 5,000 square feet of commercial. A petition to annex into the city limits has also been received with this rezoning application. The place type map is mixed-use neighborhood and recreation and open space, and the proposed rezoning is consistent. There is no change proposed to that.
Who is the applicant for this?
The applicant for this is Patrick Biker with Morningstar Law Group.
Thank you. Any comments or questions?
To follow up on yours, who's Patrick Biker representing? Just curious.
I actually don't have that information on me right now. I'm sorry.
So I just want to say thank you. Really glad to see that everything being proposed is within the urban growth boundary. Great to hear that one of the projects came back removing. I mean, to me, that says that the message is getting out to the community that we are going to follow our plan and our adopted map. This to me sounds interesting and exciting, especially, you know, when we talk about the vision for having mixed use and walkable development. So this will be really interesting to see what happens. And also the Morgan Farm incorporating 5,000 square feet of non-residential use again. So hopefully we'll see more and more of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other
Thank you.
questions? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. City County Appearance Commission Interlocal Agreement Amendment. Kyla?
Morning. I'm Kayla Seibel, Senior Planner with the Planning Department. I'm also the staff liaison to the Appearance Commission. So this, in short, this item is an informational item about a staff proposal to amend the Appearance Commission's interlocal agreement to add an expiration date of January 1st, 2026. And that would effectively sunset the Appearance Commission. So for some background, at your presentation early spring, we presented the annual report for the Appearance Commission, and we talked about some of the issues that the Appearance Commission has been experiencing for several years now around quorum retention and duplication of responsibilities with the organizations. We can answer any of those questions again, but we talked about those and how the staff was going to work with the Appearance Commission to come up with a path forward for the volunteers who are interested in still advising and workshopping design and urban design type ideas. So what we came up with was first to add an expiration date for the interlocal, and then also move to a task force-based model that meets on an as-needed basis with staff. So that is, in short, what this item is. And after today, it'll move forward to the respective boards for approval. And that's it. Any questions?
Thank you, Kayla. Any comments or questions? All right. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks.
And our last item today, the new UDO engagement updates, Lisa Miller.
Good morning, everyone. Great job getting back on schedule. All right, so I'm Lisa Miller with the Planning and Development Department. We conducted an engagement session over a couple of months this summer on Module 2 of the new Unified Development Ordinance project. We wanted to share some of that information with you all, both on who we were able to engage and what sorts of feedback that we heard on that content. We're continuing to prepare for the next round of engagement as well, and I'll give just a brief preview on that. So just a quick reminder, you all heard from Colin earlier this morning, so we have our technical consultant Code Studio that we're working with. Planning staff is kind of handling project management, broad engagement, and then TG Allen and Associates, Dr. Tawana Allen, is doing focused engagement, leading the Engagement Ambassadors Program, and we're all working closely together. So this was our schedule of engagement. We also did a number of different tabling events, just trying to get the word out, letting people know about the survey. Project information and education has been an ongoing thing throughout this process as we're trying to help more and more residents understand what the Unified Development Ordinance is, how it impacts them, because we know that when they understand that it has a big impact, and it's helpful to get their feedback. So these were the different ways that we engaged folks in different ways. I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Tawana Allen and her work with, we had about, I think, 12 engagement ambassadors that really did a lot of work trying to get feedback for us and did an amazing job. I'm really excited about the work that they were able to do. And a lot of those folks are interested in continuing to work with us in this next round of engagement. So I did want to share just a few highlights from the engagement feedback that we received. There's summary information in your packet, both again on what we heard from people and who all we heard from for folks who responded to our demographic questions. But overall, there was a lot of support. All the questions had kind of the multiple choice questions had kind of 5 options, with neutral or I need more information in the middle, and then I'm kind of supportive or kind of unsupportive or very supportive, very unsupportive. The kind of and very supportive was by and far the majority across the board. So a lot of support for the direction that these are moving. In particular, the kind of pedestrian access requirements and the transitions and screening proposals got kind of the highest support in that area. Any of the negative responses were consistently low across questions. No more than 11% of the responses were kind of those lower 2. So big picture, lots of support for this direction. And just one reminder, one of the things that we tried to do with this round of engagement is help people understand what's the comprehensive plan policy that we're trying to enact with these regulations, what's in place existing and how is it changing where there is a significant change happening. So that connection, just trying to help folks understand this as an implementation tool of pieces of the comprehensive plan. So a couple of big picture things that are not surprising, particularly around parking and transitions in the kind of open-ended free response that we heard from folks. It was people on opposite ends of the spectrum sharing their perspectives. So people who think we need more parking is a big problem. People who are saying let's not have any parking or at least no surface parking. And similarly, particularly with the transitions around whether there are transitions between uses in an urban environment, whether that's a good use of our land. If we do have transitions, are they narrower and have a wall, or are they wider and have landscape? There are people really divided on that as well. And then, not surprisingly, just a lot of support for various landscape requirements, environmental protections, any opportunity for native landscaping, things like that. Still lots of support for. And then we did hear a number of folks share their perspectives around lighting, kind of that balance again between wanting to feel safe and then also making sure that we're not having light spill over, and a number of folks referencing that kind of bird-friendly design that's come up in this space a number of times. The kind of middle denotation that I mentioned in that 5-tier response for multiple choice questions of neutral or I need to know more. We did hear a lot more of the I need to know more around the 2 zoning district examples that we gave and the questions we had for folks to give feedback on there. So we had a couple of questions both about the commercial neighborhood district because we wanted to get some feedback on the proposed uses and kind of scale of that within residential areas, and then also the commercial mixed use 8-story, because that's kind of a new, it's not something we have a lot of. It's something we have said is appropriate in the TOA most likely, a transit opportunity area place type. So those are 2 things that we decided to start getting some more detailed feedback around this past round. So you can see some of the responses around what we heard as far as uses within the commercial neighborhood district. A lot of support for the proposed building length, but that was a piece where there was more folks that said they needed to know more. And in general, as we showed, the way that the development standards that are proposed would apply on this example site in a commercial neighborhood district, more folks that had some questions about how that all works. So we definitely are going to be doing more of that in our next round of engagement and as the project continues.
Are we doing any analysis around when we're thinking about commercial spaces, like analysis of what square footage, like what businesses can actually be supported when you think about like that building? Like we often hear like, well, you need this much square footage to really accommodate a grocery store. And so if it doesn't have that square footage, it's just not going to be, have that amenity. So are we doing any analysis around that? Because I don't want our rules to then, okay, it's like very small. And so then what retail can actually be supported, it doesn't work with the rent that somebody might have to pay to put a retail. And then we just get a Dollar General, which is, I think, what folks often don't realize is, oh, we can require commercial, but then what you're going to get is a Dollar General. And that's not necessarily what folks thought of when they thought they wanted commercial.
So we haven't done an analysis of that. I will say it's something that we've talked about and thought about. So I believe that the CN district has a 10,000 square foot limitation for building footprint. I don't think that we're imagining like we're not imagining like a full-size grocery store. That's one of the things that has been part of the conversation with residents is people have really different ideas when you say commercial, neighborhood commercial. What does that mean? So for some people, it's getting in my car and driving 15 minutes away to go to the shopping center and like, oh, we need more commercial because there's just residential everywhere in, the southeast central Durham area. And then other folks are like thinking about a corner store. So we're definitely thinking about that, but it's not a thing that we have kind of a separate analysis around at this time.
I know as we get further in, I think that will be helpful. We can't control who that tenant is going to be. And then I don't want to, we get the email, well, a vape shop moved in. Well, guess what? That's what can be supported and your neighbors are walking to the vape shop. So that's that's why it's there. We get a lot of them, Mayor Pro Tem. You know what I'm talking about. So I just want to be thoughtful about, that, well, commercial means all kinds of things, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where part of what we were trying to get at is understanding what sorts of non-residential uses folks are comfortable with. And one of the things that came up is even kind of within some of our use categories that some folks feel like the use categories themselves are too broad for this purpose. So thinking about, retail sales and service is super broad, right? And so even just limiting the footprint, maybe not being enough, but wanting to have some more detailed feedback about what's allowed.
And then I have another, sorry, y'all, now I'm here. So because this pops up in this idea, like how certain cities, and it's a very different city than ours, but Mexico City gets popped up a lot because of its micro retail, like actually tiny spaces that the rent's really small. And so that connectivity back to OEWD, right? So that's going to be critical if we want, because it's two things. It's like the same with like transit units. We have to undo behaviors, right? It's not just we got to make the land do a thing, or we have to it's psychology. I'm used to driving to my Costco, right? Right now, when I lived in Chicago, no, I didn't do that, right? So it's a both and so then what is the city on its economic development side going to do to support some of these small retailers? Do we have funds? Do we set aside funds to give people microloans, things like that? Because the only way that we're going to create that kind of 15-minute city that isn't just a dollar store is if we put our money where our mouth is and create that ecosystem.
I was just going to clarify really quickly that so right now for CN, it doesn't actually have a lot size requirement in the new UDO, so it does allow that flexibility. There might be something to the mapping logic that's around 10,000. I'm looking at Scott. He's okay, current code. So the thing to think about is that To try and get at some of that in the RD, there is the 5,000 square foot. So you could do limited non-residential within RD, so long as it doesn't get above 5,000 square feet with a minor special use permit. However, if you wanted to do smaller commercial neighborhood, there's technically no lot size requirement. There is like a building coverage requirement of around 60%. So they would need to sort of plan that out. But it is definitely tricky to think about for sure. But just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you for raising this issue. I would, again, similar to the density bonus issue, we can look at a lot of examples. When you go shopping in New York City in the grocery store, it's a multi-story grocery store. It's not, it's 2 or 3 stories. So I think we need to also think about that. Lots of cities, that's where you see, in the United States, even in urban areas. So it's not just ground floor, linear. And the other is we can also look at our own experiences here locally, talking to, I know, for instance, Durham County real estate staff. We've already had our experiences with our Admin 2 building, trying to create ground floor retail at Admin 2, the challenges that we've had with that and our local market. And also with our 500 East Main Street project, we actually designed that project to include a grocery store. And we allotted what was considered the space. Turns out there was no one. We even tried to work with the Durham Food Co-op and things like that, Bodega, and it didn't work. The numbers didn't work, to your point. So making sure that we have the flexibility, and also around micro retail. I've seen it, I'll never forget, in London, under the bridges and things, tiny little retail spaces. So I agree. I think again, I hope we'll look at examples around not just the country, but around the world, and be innovative in that way. Thank you. So thanks for raising the issue.
All right, just a couple more slides. So the other example I mentioned is the commercial mixed use, particularly the 8-story. So it's again, and more of the folks who are responding had kind of questions about how all of this works together, the actual zoning district with the development standards. But we did still hear a lot of support for kind of the pedestrian friendly design features, and the way that the development standards play out in this district. Heard some, so this, just a quick, the illustration on the right here is intended to kind of show what it might look like if we had one of our, transit opportunity areas, a shopping mall or shopping strip kind of development that's starting to transition into something where you've got something more transit supportive. So you've got the 8-story building under the G letter there, and then the D off to the right is like a CX5 as it's kind of transitioning to residential adjacent. So we use these images in our engagement, and one of the things that y'all had asked about in the past was illustrations. So we also wanted to make sure to make those available to you all. But again, a lot of support for that kind of ground level active uses. Definitely the same kinds of concerns from residents around making sure that we're not doing something that's just going to result in vacant spaces on that ground level. So definitely something that we're already thinking about. So just briefly, we had a really pretty good representation across different demographics. I will say in the attachments, you'll see for each one of the demographic questions, kind of the number of folks who chose to answer it. We always make that information optional because we know not everyone's comfortable sharing that information about themselves. But so we had, I think it was around 720 surveys total, and anywhere from 500 to 600 some that responded to these questions. So we had a lot of young people participate, a lot of Hispanic, Latino folks, a good number of folks that filled out this survey in Spanish, a number of LGBTQIA plus identifying folks, a good number of folks with someone with a disability in their house, a huge number of renters compared to what we normally get, which was really great, and just kind of a lot of pretty even representation across the range for a number of different demographics. So we're really excited about that, and a huge credit again to our engagement ambassadors for helping us get that. So we are going to do similar engagement for the next round. We will be kicking off with another Code Connect that Code Studio will be leading, kind of walking through the information next month. We will be doing more now that we've got quite a bit of the regulations sorted out that we're publishing and sharing with folks and helping folks understand. Now we want to do more work on engaging folks on the map. So we didn't want to be doing a ton of work on the map when people didn't necessarily understand the regulations yet, and they might change a lot. So trying not to change everything at the same time. So we'll be doing more on that. One of the things that I think was really beneficial, we had the Lakewood Small Area Plan kickoff meeting, had a chance to share information about this project and specifically help them understand how their input can be pulled into this project. And I think as we were looking at that particular area, people had a lot of really good questions and thoughts around this project. So we will continue to work with Tawana and the engagement ambassadors on this next round. And with that, I will answer any questions.
Thank you, Lisa. Questions, comments? Lisa, the next module is about what?
So subdivision and infrastructure primarily. So it'll include like street sections. Code Studio is developing another kind of illustrative example of like what it would look like for greenfield development with RD to help illustrate how more of the regulations work together, as well as what are the different ways that kind of housing types that can be created within RD, some of that. But yeah.
And how many modules will there be altogether?
So the fourth module is mainly like administrative process definitions, all that kind of stuff. And so after module 3 engagement, our next engagement is planned to be on kind of the full draft altogether.
Awesome. So we are like halfway there.
More than halfway.
We're more than halfway there.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, very exciting.
That is so exciting. And so this timeline would be October, November for module 3, and then module 4
this winter. Yeah.
the winter, and then adoption in the spring.
Yep.
Fantastic. Awesome. Okay. This is really, really exciting. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens on Hillsborough Road with the redevelopment that's happening on Hillsborough Road, where the old Coca-Cola site was. Yeah, I'm excited to see that, the start of the reimagining of some of our existing development is really cool. The parking lot, can you go back to the image of the parking lot landscaping in your presentation? It was the one that had pictures of like landscaped islands. Oh, okay. Maybe it's not in this PowerPoint. Maybe it was just online. Okay. In the packet you gave.
Oh,
Yeah, that one.
Yeah. I think it was showing the kind of vehicle use area, the
Yes.
parking lot landscaping
Yes,
stuff.
okay.
Yeah.
Are you looking at things like bioretention, low impact development in parking lots?
That is a great
And
question.
on-site stormwater?
Yes and no. Yes, in that we would like to include it where possible. No, in that it can be a little difficult to require it in every single parking lot. And the way that these standards are currently structured, which functions similarly to the existing UDO, is that once you hit a certain threshold of parking spaces, then you have to meet all of the parking lot standards, so landscaping, all of paving, curb, all that sort of fun stuff. And so for the new UDO, that's going to be 6 spaces. Stormwater reviewed the draft, which did have some low impact development standards within it, and they have some hesitation about enforcing that across every parking lot. So trying to find ways to incentivize low impact development is definitely, and green infrastructure is something we're definitely interested in. But given that they also have to both monitor and sort of maintain SCMs, I think adding parking lots into that sort of maintenance schedule is maybe not, they have some hesitation around there. So trying to figure out ways that we can incentivize that behavior, or find maybe a different threshold where it's beyond 6 spaces, something along those lines.
I would really like to see you all bring us something I understand, not for something small, but with what is happening with climate change, with flooding, if we are not planning resiliency into things like our impervious surface, then we're losing out on a huge opportunity. We just saw what happened in Durham with Chantal. I mean, even when you're talking about an apartment complex, parking lots, just imagine maybe we could have had less flooding in the apartments that we saw that flooded if there had been something, to help with some on-site stormwater management in the parking. And I mean, I see it in cities all over the country. I just was in downtown Little Rock and saw bioretention that they're doing in their downtown. So this is something we have not been leading on in Durham. So I really would like, I hope our stormwater folks on the city and the county side can really push the envelope or their comfort levels on this. And I just, yeah, we have to be thinking about this resiliency as we build out our environment.
One thing I'll add is, so as a way to try and incentivize these behaviors, we're coming up with the sort of sustainability matrix that I think you all had requested before, and now we're trying to put it all together. And I think one of the ways of getting at some of those thresholds is sort of like an incentive basis of like maybe a point system, right? And then you get a certain number of points if you provide low impact development, or something along those lines. Green stormwater infrastructure. Too many long names this morning, but something along those lines where it's not a requirement always, but like is heavily incentivized, or at least like is an option, like providing the opportunity to provide more sustainable development wherever possible, right? Because we do have those limitations with like single family in the state, and trying to walk that line in such a way. So there will be a JCCPC item where we introduce that and some of the other infill standards, and just thinking about residential generally, but also the sustainability matrix will go beyond residential development. But yes, absolutely heard.
Yeah. I mean, it's something as simple as when you build a landscaped island in a parking lot, you don't have a little curb around it, so that actually you design it so the water can flow into the landscaped islands. I mean, it's that simple. Yeah, okay. I also want to applaud the staff. I know was in the report, not here, but the addressing the fortress wall. We've seen these developments, especially in East Durham, where they flattened, and then they have this huge retaining wall that makes it's horrible. And so you all have tried to address that with something that's staggered. So thank you so much for that. And I just had a question. Why do you think that people were opposed to bed and breakfast in commercial areas?
So in commercial neighborhood, so.
Yeah, commercial
Yeah, I don't
neighborhoods.
know. I was surprised by that, honestly. So, so again, this is, small scale, within residential areas, commercial. So maybe it was just, this isn't a use that I will benefit from, and that's what I want focused on. That's what I want the focus to be for things that are kind of within my neighborhood. But I don't know. It was surprising.
Okay, yeah, I don't get that. Like
Maybe
cemeteries, I
thinking
can
about-
understand.
Maybe they're thinking about short-term rentals in general, because we've definitely heard a lot
Okay,
of
okay,
frustration with
Okay.
housing that's being
I
used
see,
for
I
short-term
see.
rentals and how
Okay.
that's impacting adjacent
Okay.
adjacent properties and taking.
Are we addressing short-term rentals at all?
So the use table is in process. The updates. I don't know if you have anything you want to say on that, Robin.
I don't believe that we currently have plans to regulate short-term rentals, but if that's something that you all feel strongly about to give us direction on, we can look further into it. But Sarah says, maybe don't say that.
Okay, yeah, okay.
No, I mean, this has come up. There's been residents who've reached out to me, and I want to thank the city attorney's office. Both Asheville and Wilmington had pretty intense ordinances, and then they got preempted and their hands slapped pretty hard, so.
But some things can be addressed within short-term rentals. I think it's worth looking into.
I can't talk, sorry. The parts that were left that were allowed were not the part of enforcement that had any real teeth to it. And so, yes, you're correct. There are parts of the Asheville ordinance that still stand, but it's not the part that really was dealing with the root issue that folks were worried about.
Yes, go ahead.
Happy
Sarah.
to forward you the emails between the city attorney and I over this issue. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think from a staff perspective, my concern is doing something that becomes a paperwork exercise that just burdens the property owner, burdens staff for no actual, benefit or outcome to adjacent residents. I don't think that's a good use of anyone's time. And because of this, I think what's left on the table to potentially regulate the juice is not worth the squeeze, to quote either Keith Chadwell or Scott Whiteman. I can't remember which.
Thank you. And just the emphasis on also walkability. Sidewalks are not really walkable unless there's good tree coverage, because then you're just walking down a hot sidewalk. Could you remind us about what will be the requirement around street trees?
That went off. I think it's staying at 1 per 40 linear feet, right?
Yeah, or 1 per 30 for understory.
And is that, I have no idea what that means. Like, is that what's considered a best practice if you want to have
30 is best practice.
30? To really have tree coverage and shade and, again, dealing with climate change and heat island index and all that.
Yeah. Sorry, I did not mean to.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, this is definitely top of mind too, because right now, when we're thinking about street trees, they're organized by development tier in the landscape manual. So when you think about the suburban tier, you're gonna be allowed to plant like larger trees, right? Because ostensibly they would have more space to grow up. Obviously, we've had a lot of development that is more urban in the suburban tier, which makes sense, right? We're growing fast. And therefore, a lot of tree inspections have had a lot of struggle to get that number in, right? Because they're required to plant larger canopy trees because they're in the suburban tier, but it requires that soil volume at the same time. So trying to figure out how we sort of make sure that that all plays together is both a part of the UDO and a part of the street typologies that will be coming up soon as well, like making sure that we're mandating enough right of way, but also when we update the landscape manual almost immediately after the UDO to make sure that everything is congealing is another sort of portion, right? Like thinking about where and how and like what species work best. Because 1 per 30 doesn't really work in a situation where you have like a lot of townhomes unless you've dedicated enough right of way, right? Because they're so close to the street and they have that good urban form. But you don't want a large tree between like a townhome and the street. just from an arborist perspective. So doing a lot of fun analysis around that right now.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that you're an arborist. Okay, thank you so much. And we are ending completely on time, 11:44. Thank you so much. I did want to ask, the RTP PowerPoint, I don't think was part of our materials. If we could get that and get that sent out to everybody, that would be great. And any preview of our next month's agenda, Sarah? That we should.
He probably knows better than I.
I can tell you the new UDO items are going to be, there's one on public art, and there will be one going over module 3. So I was talking, as Lisa said, about some of the infrastructure and public improvements, but also the environmental protection standards.
Fantastic. And maybe a presentation on the Durham Housing Initiative.